Hey, so let's finish up the example problem that we were working on yesterday, where we were trying to estimate the true quiz score average for all students given these randomly selected quiz scores. And the whole idea is we need to create a confidence interval, a range of plausible values for the true mean score given a sample mean. And we're going to use this formula to do so. We did a lot in this example problem already. We checked all three conditions and saw that even though the sample size was really small, we were still able to do inference. We're still able to create a t-interval because the sample data is roughly symmetric and there's no obvious apparent outliers. On the do step for the actual calculations, we established that since the sample size is 5, there are 4 degrees of freedom, and the critical t-value at 90% confidence with 4 degrees of freedom, the critical t-value that we need to use to create this interval is 2.132. Again, that just came from table B. In table B, we know the critical value is 2.132 for this problem. Now, some other things that we need to find in order to use this formula. So we found the critical value. We know what the sample size is, but we also need to find the sample mean and standard deviation. So let's do that. The sample mean. And for these problems, you will also need to find the standard deviation of the sample. I think the easiest way to do this one, since the mean and standard deviation were not given to us, we got the raw data instead. So these data points, these 5 quiz scores, I would go to a calculator, hit the stat button, hit enter, and type those quiz scores into a list. So we had 83, 88, 79, 85, and 90. To get the mean and standard deviation, I'll hit stat again, go over to calculate, and we've got the one variable, just the quiz scores. So we'll hit enter a couple of times, and it spits out what we need. X bar, the sample mean, the average quiz score in the sample is 85. And from the calculator, we know that the standard deviation of our sample is 3.85. I'll just round to the nearest 100, 3.85. Okay, so when you have these values, when you have all of this stuff, you'll be able to actually find or create the confidence interval. Do this stuff first. Find the critical value, make sure you have the mean and standard deviation. Then we can use that formula. Put all this stuff into that formula. Again, I'm just following this up here to create my interval. So the sample mean is what we'll start with. It's 85. So we'll go with 85 plus or minus. The critical value is 2.132. And then we're going to multiply all of that by the standard deviation, which I rounded to 3.85, and divide it by the square root of sample size was 5. Okay, so we plugged everything in. Now it just becomes a little bit of arithmetic and work on simplifying this problem here by way of calculating devices. So we'll deal with this first, 3.85 divided by the square root of 5. And that becomes 1.72. Let me rewrite this equation or this expression here. 85 plus or minus 2.132 times, again, we just did this part. We did the standard deviation divided by square root of sample size, and we got 1.72. I keep on working through this. I can now multiply the critical value by the standard error. 1.72 times 2.132. Maybe that's pretty close to 3.67. plus or minus 3.67. Okay, on your assignment today, from this point, you would add 3.67 to 85, subtract 3.67 from 85, and then your interval would be created. I also want you to be able to pick out a couple of things though. So again, on your assignment for today, you are going to be asked to find the standard error. Standard error. And the standard error here, the standard error for our mean, for our sample mean is 1.72. Then I'm also going to have you pick out and find the margins of error. Margin of error for this problem here is what we're adding and subtracting. So the margin of error is 3.67. Keep in mind, you are going to have to find those two things. So don't try to just calculate all this stuff all at once. Kind of work through it step by step, because there's a lot of multiple choice questions on the AP Stats exam where they ask you only to find the standard error or only to find the margin of error. So I just need you to be able to distinguish which pieces of this formula those come from. Okay, well, let's finish this off. So we have 85 plus 3.67, 85 minus 3.67. That's what we'll use to create our confidence interval. So our confidence interval is literally going to range from 81.33, 81.33, and it's going to go up to the lower amount here, or the higher amount is 88.67. All right, so the confidence interval has been created. And then just for fun, let's write a little conclusion statement to wrap this up. Just so you're aware that nothing really changes when we're estimating means for this conclusion statement. So we could start this off and follow that kind of template that we talked about in class maybe a couple of weeks ago. So we could say something along the lines of, we are 90% confident. We're 90% confident that the interval we are 90% confident that the interval from our lower amount, 81.33, to the upper limit there, 88.67. We are 90% confident that that interval contains the true quiz score average for all students, at least for all students that took that quiz. And that would be good enough. Okay, so again, sorry for the class ending so abruptly, but that's how you would have finished this problem with perfect credit. Thanks for watching. See y'all in class. Bye-bye.